And all they had left was just to print money and start buying things. And that's what they did. And it turned out to be a very wise response.
Are you surprised by how long this expansion has lasted?
Of course, it's lasted a long time. But what was really remarkable is that we never printed money so much and spent it so fast and bought back so much debt, public and private. So this is total terra incognita in economics. And nobody knew for sure how it was going to work.
So is it risky then?
Of course it was risky, but it worked. And I don't think they had much else that would work. They weren't set up to do stimulus. Too much controversy, democratic inertia, various kinds. So they had to do something. And all they had left was just to print money and start buying things. And that's what they did. And it turned out to be a very wise response. And what's even more remarkable is that both Congress and the presidency and under both parties made the same decision. They all cooperated. It was the last time.
But where is that going to leave us ultimately?
Well, it left us licking the Great Recession. So maybe we ought to try cooperation again since it worked so well once.
How much is President Trump responsible for this current economic situation?
Well, I think he deserves some credit, but a lot of it just happened.
Economic cycle?
Yeah. And the decisions of his predecessors.
What do you think about the president's campaign to lobby the Fed to lower rates or keep rates low?
Well, I think presidents have always done this. If you're a politician in a democracy, of course, you want people to print money and spend it. And of course, it's not a good idea. The best example, probably in the whole world, is Singapore, which has zero debt and never prints money and spends it, and is one of the most successful places on earth. I wish we were like that, but there's only one Singapore.
Well, some people now say that federal debt is not a problem at all.
Well, if you believe that, you believe in the tooth fairy, because then we don't have to have any more taxes ever. We'll just print money and live happily ever after. It obviously won't work.
So
there comes a point when printing money is counterproductive.
Are we at that point? Are you concerned?
No, I don't think we are at that point. But nobody knew where the point was going to come. And we don't know now. None of these people who are so pompously sure of things, because we all want reassurance, and so they provide it. But nobody really knows how much of this is too much.
And do you have any thoughts on Jay Powell and the job that he's done?
Well, I think a lot of him. I think he's as good a choice as we could have made.
One consequence of this expansion, or actually it precedes that, it's just something that's occurred in our economy over the past 50 years really, has been wealth and income inequality.
Yeah.
One, do you see it as a problem? Two, if so, how do we address it?
Well, it's a problem if enough politicians are screaming about it. That makes it a problem. If it weren't for that, this one will go away by itself. It happened by accident. We were in desperate trouble. We were on the eve of a Great Recession that could have been a Great Depression, and then followed by the rise of people like Adolf Hitler and so on and so on. So we faced a real catastrophe. The only weapon they had with this huge was to print money and spend it. And they did it. Well, of course, and they drove interest rates down to zero, or real interest rates. Well, of course, that lifted asset values for the people who were already rich. Nobody was trying to make the rich richer. It just was an accidental byproduct of a correct governmental decision made on a bipartisan basis. And since it was a weird byproduct that occurred in a weird time, it will go away by itself in due course.
It'll go away by itself,
Sure.
So there's no reason for...
The people that are screaming about it are idiots. It's going to go away by itself. Now, that's not to say that we can't raise the minimum wage a little and enlarge the social safety net a little. We should be doing that as we prosper. Both parties agree on that.
What do you think about the proposals put forth by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Elizabeth Warren that would sort of greatly address this problem?
Well, I don't consider those two necessarily the best prescribers in the world. They're kind of likable. I particularly kind of like Elizabeth Warren. She's got a manner that appeals to me.
Really?
But I don't agree with her attitude. I don't think she's studied Adam Smith enough.
And what about AOC? Do you have any take on her?
I don't think she knows who Adam Smith was.
I want to ask you just a few more questions about politics, and we can talk about the markets and Berkshire a little bit more. What about the situation that we find ourselves in with the Mueller report and the way Congress and the Democrats are fixating on that and the president's on the defensive? What is your thinking on that?
I tend to avoid the whole subject, just as I ignore tide with me, tide against, and just keep swimming. Both parties are so partisan now that they're blinded by their anger. And I don't want to be blinded by my anger, so I control it. And I would recommend it to both parties. I think they should all cool it.
Why are we so divided up, Charlie, right now in this country?
Well, anger, when you pound on one another, feeds on itself. That's one of the great difficulties with it. It's irrational and it feeds on itself. So I liked the world when it was Dwight Eisenhower against Adlai Stevenson, and more civility, and Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill got along, and a lot of it was done. My war was a bipartisan war. And in the aftermath, foreign policy of the United States was a bipartisan policy. I like that world better. I hate this extreme hatred on both sides.
Will we ever get back to those days or get to new days where we don't have the hatred?
Probably. You live long enough, a lot of good things happen, a lot of bad things happen.